Hello there. So I'm going to try and not make this too long, but it's about language and programming. I don't know who of you are familiar with Cliff High and the work that he was doing skimming. He's a tech guy and a data guy, and I don't necessarily trust his motives and everything he does any more than anyone else. But the data's there, so run with it. As long as you know it could be a hand grenade with the pin out, right? And he put a thing in today talking about his data skimming, how he was trying to do predictive stuff through language, skimming the internet for language and running it through a probability program that he'd set up, looking for keywords that could be predictive for future events. And he kind of released it. He broadened his scope because on the financial market side of things, it was working really well. Like one stage he was getting, 70, 80% hits. And really, theoretically, that should be 50-50 at best. So it was an interesting tool, like the idea that we subconsciously put certain phrases and words into our language because we have this telepathic knowing of what's coming up either in the program or whatever, like however you want to look at that can cut in a lot of different ways, right? And today he was talking about around the climate change narrative and how he got a bee in his bonnet and he went back and looked because he predicted a lot of disasters and events, like cataclysmic earth events that had come through the language, just the same as the cryptocurrency stuff had come through, or government collapse, or people will start talking about aliens a lot, or all of that stuff. Governments failing, trusting government being at all-time low. These things that had kind of popped up through the language before they came up, operating like a program, but like a prelude to what's going to come up in the program through like a psychic entanglement with humans. But the natural disaster was crap. Like he had a really bad strike rate on the natural disaster stuff. And so he kind of went looking and digging and looking, and to the best that he could work out, most of the narrative language around the natural disaster stuff seems to have just been injected, totally just injected randomly. Because like not back to 50-50 didn't come to fruition, like even lower out the other side. So it's been intentionally faked, but faked and injected into not just the human narrative or the human language, but perhaps the human psyche. So we're talking, movies and stuff, but I'd go a step further than that, like lower astral dream state. People have been getting monkeyed with around this stuff, and it monkeyed with his data, so his predictive data programming. And the thought around that instantly is, if his computer skimming, internet skimming for like stream of consciousness language keywords, if that got muddied up around this cataclysmic event narrative, then what does that say for channeled information, near-death experiences, gurus, all of that stuff? What does that say about that? Because if it's not just injected in the society at a low level, but if it's actually like a group of people sitting in a room, getting paid, getting remunerated somehow to sit in a room and meditate on projecting a particular disaster event and just projecting it out into the lower astral, projecting it out into the dream space, like into the etheric, like to something that's just not going to happen. It's not going to come unless enough people, because it's like the thoughts create things. Maybe if enough people lean on that door and get fired up, you might even make something happen. But it seems like that's not the case. It seems like the language, and this is like the one case that disproves the rule, is the language far and away outweighs actual events happening. Whereas most times the language predicts it and then it happens, but not with natural disasters. So if there's a group, like, this is not just astrology and asteroids and like a base program running out, this narrative just running out again and again and again on a cycle. This is looking more like a deliberate injection of an event or keywords or a narrative around disasters and cataclysms, mud floods, tidal waves, ring of fire, earthquakes, you name it, right? Storm events, whatever. If that's been injected in lower astral and etheric, like into dream space, basically, not even into walking around space through TV and radio, and then it's kind of echoing back out, but there's nothing to back it up. There's no feedback loop. This is just like some weird thing that's been syringed in on the side. Then that gives you a really, really good look at how the program is in the language. And that's what this is all about for me. It's like working out how the programs run in here, because there's more than one running. There are multiple programs stacked on top of each other. But your program, your language, and how your language is structured and how the words work and the phonetics of that, because English is a doozy, right? The phonetics of that language, that completely affects how you think. Like, people who think and dream in Mandarin do not approach problems the way people who think in English do. Like, it's the whole word structure, it's the sentence structure, it's the phonetics of everything. Like, it is a base program that you're running on. And people with multiple languages, I guess, know how to operate themselves on multiple languages. But like, people who speak multiple languages say to me, yeah, but you don't usually dream in multiple languages. You usually dream in one language or the other. And if you say German and English speaking, and you live in Germany and you move to England or the United States or Canada or Australia, and you start speaking English, but not a lot, and you haven't ever done it a lot, and you someone talks to you in English and you translate it into German in your head, and then you answer them in German in your head, then you speak the English back, and slowly you get better in English, and there'll be a crossover point in that immersion somewhere where you'll stop dreaming in German and you'll start dreaming in English. I've talked to people who this has happened to. It's not theoretical. This is how it goes. So if you can inject ideas in, like, you can do that in both ways then. You can inject feelings in and then watch them ripple out through the language. And you can inject things into the language and you can watch how that'll ripple out through people's behavior, their dreams, and like, this cuts in both directions, but it's all around the language as the day-to-day operating program. And so when you say, is it right or wrong, not correct, but right, what is that implying? That's implying right or left. That's a one-sided. So being right, automatically that internally says in you that being correct is a one-sided act. But the word correct doesn't imply one-sided at all. It implies correctness. But if you're right and wrong and right and left, then there we are. It starts to get really messy. So it's like that day-to-day language that you use. How is that programming your perceptions of how you're operating in your day? And then how could you readjust how you speak to reprogram your perceptions so you don't say, instead of that being wrong, that's right, you say that's correct. I mean, it's really, really little things, but that can make a big difference. All right. Much love.